Tokyo, 1936. It was still dark when the soldiers marched through the snow, just boots on ice and bayonets gleaming under the moonlight. They stopped at a quiet wooden house. Inside, an old man, not a general, just a man with a pen. But this wasn't just any man. He was the only one in Japan brave enough to say, "No, we can't afford more war." That night, Takahashi Korekiyo, former prime minister, savior of Japan's economy, and architect of one of the first modern stimulus plans, was murdered in his sleep. Why? Well, this is the story of the economist who defied his own government and paid the ultimate price. Before he became Japan's most powerful economist, Takahashi Korekiyo was a rebel child with no future. Born in 1854 to a maid and a drunken court painter, he was adopted into a low-ranking samurai family and raised by his grandmother, a tough, forward-thinking woman who taught him how to survive in a world changing faster than anyone could understand. At just 13, he talked his way onto a ship to America, dreaming of education. Instead, he ended up as an indentured servant on a Californian farm. He was beaten, nearly killed, and treated like a slave. But Takahashi escaped, literally, running away and sneaking back to Japan. He came home to a nation in chaos. Samurai were clashing with the new imperial government. Takahashi joined a militia, hid from the police. Then, somehow, found work as an English teacher despite never finishing school. What he lacked in credentials, he made up for in charm, wit, and a brain that refused to quit. He moved from job to job, banks, ministries, trading companies, until, against all odds, he was appointed as governor of the Bank of Japan. He had no degree, no formal economic training, but by the early 1900s, Takahashi had become the man Japan trusted to raise funds for war, manage the economy, and stabilize its currency. He traveled the world, befriended bankers in London, cut deals on Wall Street, and learned every financial trick in the book. But Takahashi didn't just want Japan to be strong. He wanted it to be peaceful. While the generals looked across the sea to conquer China and Korea, Takahashi looked at the budget and saw disaster waiting. By the early 1930s, Japan was sinking fast. The Great Depression had crushed global trade. Prices were collapsing. Factories stood silent. Millions were out of work. The world was tightening its belt. So was Japan, until Takahashi Korekiyo came out of retirement. He was 77. He had already saved Japan once before. Now he was back, summoned by the Prime Minister as the last hope. And what he did next was nothing short of revolutionary. First, he did what most countries were too afraid to do. He took Japan off the gold standard. The yen collapsed in value. But suddenly, Japan's exports were cheap. Silk and textiles flew off the docks. Factories buzzed again. Workers were rehired. For the first time in years, there was hope. Next, he printed money. Literally. He told the Bank of Japan to buy government bonds, and he used that money to fund massive public works. Roads, irrigation, ports. Not only was this bold, it was new. This was 1932, before FDR, before Keynes, before the New Deal. He cut interest rates, boosted spending, and unleashed one of the first coordinated fiscal and monetary stimulus packages in modern history. Japan's economy surged while the rest of the world was still in shock. But it came at a cost. To pass his budget, Takahashi had to make a deal with the devil, more money for the military. The army used it to expand in Manchuria, build weapons, and tighten its grip on politics. Takahashi warned them, "We can't keep spending like this. It will destroy our economy." In 1935, he made a fateful decision. He would cut the military budget. It wasn't just economic policy. It was a challenge to power, and the military didn't take it lightly. It was still dark on the morning of February 26, 1936, when soldiers marched through the frozen streets of Tokyo. They weren't foreign invaders. They were Japanese, radical officers from the Imperial Army. Their target list was short: politicians, moderates, anyone who dared to stand in the way of military expansion, and at the top of that list was Takahashi Korekiyo. He was asleep in his bed when they broke down his door. Takahashi didn't fight back. He didn't beg. This was a man who had once said, "I would rather die than ruin this country with bad economics." The soldiers pulled their swords. and executed him on the spot. The man who had saved Japan from the Great Depression was murdered by his own army. With Takahashi gone, there was no one left to stop them. Military spending soared, war in China escalated, and just 5 years later, Japan would attack Pearl Harbor, plunging the world into chaos. Historians agree, Takahashi Korekiyo was the last serious attempt to rein in Japan's militarism from within. His assassination marked the death of civilian control and the beginning of total war. Takahashi Korekiyo wasn't just an economist. He was a visionary, a fighter, a man who believed that budgets matter more than bullets. He pioneered stimulus economics before it had a name, and he died trying to protect his country from the path it was about to take.